Hello and welcome to Raw Chatter. I am your host speaking, Vicky Midwood, and I am very excited to introduce you to my latest guest, all the way from the United States. Lorie Loe is with me. She is an author, a podcaster, an entrepreneur, and she has written an amazing book that we're going to be talking about. It is all about binge eating disorder, and Lorie herself has struggled with this condition for over 50 years. So this is going to be an exciting and very interesting conversation about binge eating disorder, the diet culture, and how, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, all of that stuff can affect you in so many different ways. Lorie, I'm really excited about this conversation. So tell our readers and listeners all about your book, the very first book, because you're actually in the process of writing a second one now. So tell us about the first book. Over to you.
Oh, thank you, Vicky. I'm so happy to be here. And what a pleasure it is to talk with you. As you know, you and I have chatted for a while now, and it's just amazing to have hooked up with somebody who I think is making such a difference in the health, weight, lifestyle space, just this alternative way to finding our health. Excuse me. So yeah, I wrote a book. It's called Mouth Hunger, 10 Healing Truths About Binge Eating Disorder That Will Mend Your Heart and Set You Free. And it's really was a very small book that I wrote very, very quickly because I had discovered, after suffering for 50 years, really literally over 50 years, with binge eating disorder, I suddenly woke up and realized that dieting was not the cure to binge eating. And so I started to do a lot of research on the topic of BED, the acronym for binge eating disorder, and realized that it is something that happens to us. It is not our fault. We're not just really bad dieters and can't keep the weight off. As a matter of fact, it really kind of helped me discover that it is the industry of weight loss and diet foods and ultra processed foods that are really to be blamed for keeping us disordered, keeping us frustrated that we can't maintain a healthy weight, and keeping us directed on the outside when we should be looking at what's going on with us on the inside.
Amazing. And I think for people listening, so many will be able to identify with this struggle, with decades of struggle, not just a few years or a few months, but actual decades. And then discovering that the very thing that you were using to help yourself to feel better was the thing that was actually causing the distress and the problem and the reason why you kept going back.
Yeah.
So that 10 truths helped you, I think, to see very clearly that it absolutely wasn't your fault and that the whole diet industry and food industry is lying to us. And that is a massive statement to come out with. But I know you feel very, very powerfully, strongly about this, especially at this time of year. It's January. We've had Christmas, Thanksgiving in the US as well. And it is that time of year where we are being bombarded by all sides of the diet industry and the weight loss industry. And this is the stuff that fueled your desire to try yet another diet, but also write the book, isn't it?
Yeah, it actually is. I realized that I was suffering in so much pain, and I saw everybody around me struggling with such frustration that, we can't keep the weight off. But here's the reality about weight loss and diet programs, commercial programs. They offer you quick results, which is not sustainable over time. And more often, they know it is not sustainable over time. They deeply understand that they deeply understand that any kind of intentional weight loss program triggers all kinds of metabolic changes in your body. They know that. They're very smart people. However, they also know that we've been raised in a diet culture that tells us if we are not thin, then we're not happy, we're not prosperous, we're not going to get loved, we're not going to be successful in our careers. There's all kinds of mythologies around it that this industry trades on. So even though they know that not only do diets not work, I think the statistics are as high as 95% of diets where we intentionally try to lose weight do not work. They fail. The weight loss industry knows it's going to fail, yet they continue to play on your desire to be thin in order to be culturally acceptable, to sell you another diet. And then, okay, this one will work. And then, forget that last one didn't work. Come on, let's get back on board with the next diet. The reality is that weight cycling, which is where we gain and lose weight over and over again. Here in the States, we call it yo-yo dieting.
Yeah, we do too.
Weight cycling actually creates such metabolic disorder in our bodies. Talking about disorders again, metabolic dysregulation in our bodies, that in the long term, it's going to be harder for us to maintain a healthy weight just regardless. And we get a variety of vulnerability because our immune system gets affected by all this hormonal imbalance. Now we're more susceptible to have metabolic diseases like heart disease and stroke and diabetes and hypertension and coincidentally higher weights, because now we're metabolically all screwed up from, constantly buying into the diet industry's promise of thinness.
And I think that it's fair to say it's the only industry that is guaranteed to make money from us failing.
Absolutely. And that is part of their business model. They need you to fail over and over again so they can keep selling products. And it's not just diets, it's gym memberships, and it's supplements and shakes and drinks and, all kinds of programs that if weight loss is the goal of the program, it is just part of a scam. Quite honestly, I believe it in my heart. It is part of a scam. It is a way to make money that plays on the emotional vulnerability of people who have been marginalized because of their size for years.
And that's the big issue. You said it right at the beginning. We've got this idea that we need to be a certain weight or a certain size to be perceived to be good enough, wealthy enough, rich enough, being able to be around the right people, have
desirable,
the right status,
attractive.
Exactly. And we've got to, I think, look at where has that come from, and why do you feel, because it's not the same in all cultures and it's not the same in all countries, but it is the same in a lot of cultures and a lot of countries. And so my question kind of stems to, where is this belief come from that thin equals? Do you know?
Honestly, the current kind of push toward thinness in modern society started in the early 1900s when the advertising industry got started. It's like advertisers had to figure out how to create an audience for products that their clients wanted to sell. And so it began a style of storytelling that was about being fearful of missing out, fear of missing out. I think there's actually a marketing acronym, FOMO. Yes, thank you. Yeah, and so advertisers, when kind of commercial diet products first started coming out in the early 1900s, beginning of the 20th century, marketers figured out how to make people want them. They had to make you feel like you were less than if you did not fit in. Now, so that proceeded up until like the 60s, early 70s, and then we started to see the rise of the super thin body, the supermodel, the Twiggy culture, all that kind of stuff. And that again, these were people who shook things up. So you have an alignment of kind of thin culture or diet culture in alignment with visual media and arts, models, photography, whatever, movie stars. And so that then sort of painfully coincided with another part of the industry, which is the ultra processed food industry that was willing to create and manufacture products that they called fat-free or healthy foods, when in actuality, they were just recycled crap. And I am not even exaggerating that.
No, it's true. And so the trajectory really has been over more than a century that we've looked at this thinness being desirable. And recognizing the whole processed food. We've always processed foods. Cooking is a process. Canning things is a process. Salting and preserving things is a process. And what we know is from the war years, where we had all of these factories that were creating foods that could be shipped abroad to feed people who were in the forces, suddenly when the war was over, we've now got this knowledge and this ability to be able to package foods that are energy dense. And really it was okay, so we've got these factories, we're going to keep using them, let's create something that is going to help us to sell foods to people when they don't really need them and they don't really want them. And they invented the word snacking, didn't they? And that is when snacking actually came in. It was a word that was created to help them to sell something to people who didn't really want it and weren't really hungry. So it had three particular things that it needed to hit, and they've continued basically to do that ever since.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And now it's a profit model.
Massive.
It's like, how many ways can we create something that is absolutely just waste material from other food processes? And, you have our food chemists, put in the right level of creaminess and fat and emulsification and salt and sugar flavors, into a product that we're going to then call a palatable food, a health food in a way. And then that gets us into the whole, business about lobbyists and in our different governmental levels, policymakers that make it okay for this food to be called healthy and or fat-free or whatever. And yeah, it's all advertising.
That's a whole minefield that people are trying to change. You got people like Dr. Robert Lustig, who is trying to help to start to change things. But for us who are on the receiving end of this stuff, who have suffered with binge eating disorder, just the very fact that, did you diagnose yourself or did you get a diagnosis? Did you just think you were a failed dieter or what?
Great question. Thank you, Vicky. Yeah, I just thought I was a really bad dieter and I just didn't have the willpower and I could not stick to a diet. I was put on my first diet when I was 5 years old by the family doctor. And that was the beginning of a lifetime of weight cycling, feeling not good enough, feeling tormented by my size, and not being able to be seen for who I was on the inside. So I get to, it was literally 57 years, by the way. So I guess I'm telling my age here. My point is that I got to that, and my last diet I was on, I lost a tremendous amount of weight, because diets work if you want to lose weight. They just mess you up metabolically, emotionally, and spiritually to do it.
They're not sustainable.
And they're not sustainable. They metabolically are designed to fail. It's not even that your willpower fails, although that is a finite resource. It's that your body will not allow that to continue. It is not healthy and safe.
Well, the hormonal shifts that happen because of the change in biochemistry and what is going on as a knock-on effect is ridiculously hard to reverse. And unless you know what you're doing and you're working with somebody who can help you, then chances are you're not going to know what to do. And you're just going to keep on repeating the same stuff, which is going to make things worse.
Yep, absolutely. So I got to the end of my last diet. After that diet, it was one of those things where the day I was declared in maintenance, which is like a big black hole, no diet program can sell you maintenance because they have to sell you the weight loss first, right?
Yeah.
So I began binge eating again because my brain had not changed. I was still an emotionally dependent, compulsive binge eater that was addicted to certain ultra processed foods and had learned no coping skills over the years that were about the pain or the upset or the discomfort that was truly going on in my life. I never learned how to naturally soothe and manage my own uncomfortable feelings.
Right.
So I got incredibly sick after that. I got really, really sick after that last diet. And I got to the end of it and I'm like, you know what? I am done. Obviously, this does not work. And so that's what prompted me to do the research on what exactly I was dealing with. And that's where I self-diagnosed as binge eating disorder. And there's lots of good information on it now. As a matter of fact, at my website, there is a "Do I have binge eating disorder" quiz you can take if you're at all confused. And it is the diagnostic criteria from the Mental Health Disorders Manual. It's literally what the scientists had put together. But the point is that I was misdiagnosed for years. Imagine if that doctor, when I was 5 years old, said, you know what, let's talk about why she's a little overweight for her
Yeah.
age. And who
And
knows if I
again,
even was when I was 5, for God's sakes, you know?
but this is again going back to the culture at the time was to weigh kids, and they needed to fall into a certain, you know,
Oh, yeah, it was.
framework of. And did you even know at 5 if you were overweight or fat compared to your friends? I mean, this is where who wanted you to lose weight? Was it your parents or was it you?
Yeah, it was unfortunately my mother, who was a binge eater herself and probably had been tortured by her mother, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm.
But yeah, I knew before that doctor's visit. Oh boy, this is bringing back some memories. I knew before that doctor's visit when I was 5 years old that my weight was a problem, because I had either through directly being told it or through inference by the way I was treated,
Right.
you know, the way I was told I shouldn't eat that or whatever,
Mm.
that food was a problem for me. Now,
Yeah.
coinciding with that visit to the doctor, where I didn't line up with that height weight chart he had on the back of his door, I my aunt babysat me when I was a girl, when I came home from kindergarten, which is right around that 5-year-old age.
Yeah.
And the minute I got off the school bus, I would pester and beg for sweet treats. 5 years old. So it was very obvious early on that I was obsessed with sweets, and it was never enough. I always had to have more. Well, one day my aunt shared with me, what, do you have a tapeworm? I had no idea what that meant. A tapeworm. It's like, it's one of those
To a
things
kid.
from,
What?
exactly. But I did know from her attitude that meant something was wrong with my appetite. And that meant
Right.
that something was wrong with
With
me.
you.
Again, very young, didn't know how to process any of that. But this obsession with, I am bad because I'm overweight. I am bad because I desperately want these sweet foods in my life.
Mm. That's a
Yeah.
powerful reminder, actually, because I was very similar when we were at infant school. So from age 5, we go to infant school up to age 10.
Mm-hmm.
And every day my mum would pick us up. And on the way home, there was a little corner shop which had the old fashioned jars of sweets that you could weigh out
Oh,
in
yeah.
the
Yeah. I
bags.
remember that.
And if for whatever reason we couldn't stop every day after school, I would be frustrated, distraught, crying that I couldn't get my fix. And so
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about back then, again, not realizing I was different, what was wrong with me, because my friends weren't doing that. My brother
Yeah,
wasn't doing that,
exactly.
but I was. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, you realize there's something wrong with you. But the difference is I wasn't made to feel bad about it, thankfully. But
Mm-hmm.
I knew myself that there was something wrong. And so I created a feeling of feeling bad, even though nobody else helped me to feel that way.
How funny. Yeah, the
Yeah.
way we kind of mess up, the way we mess with
Thank you.
ourselves, and the
Yeah.
way we, obviously our families of origin have a huge influence, and then our culture obviously has a huge influence, what we're growing up in, what we're seeing at school, how we're treated at school, and things of that nature. So fast forward to those 57 years later, boy, when I had an opportunity to really understand what this disorder was all about, it just changed my whole life. And I again, I'm not understating that, because I realized that this has happened to me. It did not mean that I was irretrievably broken in some way and could never figure this out and could never be happy and whatever. And so that began the journey toward writing the book, Mouth Hunger.
Great.
It was about understanding where this comes from, how it can happen to us, and probably the most important quality, or the most important thing to remember, is that we don't have to be ashamed of it. This is a disorder. It is not a character flaw. It is not a moral failing. It is something that we have in the same way that we might have, high arches, or, diabetes or whatever. We might have a propensity toward this, that, and the other thing. The point is it is not a character flaw. And when we are overweight, particularly in Western culture, but when we are overweight, we transfer the pain that we feel that causes us to binge eat already. We transfer it to our body, and we say, hey, if I fix that, if I lose that weight, I will then, all that pain that I've been living with that caused the overeating to begin with will be gone. And that's not true, because we still have to deal with that core issue. And so there's a tremendous amount of shame about the fact that we are overweight. It somehow we feel like it makes us look like we're weak or somehow lazy or we have no willpower. And that keeps binge eating disorder hidden. So we never address it. We never fix it. So my philosophy, and this is what I talk about in the book, is for gosh sakes, come out of the closet.
Yes.
Come out and be loud that I have this disorder. And this disorder was caused by the weight loss industry, the food industry, and some particular level of anxiety when I was growing up in my formative years that caused me to use sugar and sweet ultra processed foods to soothe and comfort myself and create a sense of safety. That is the scenario. It is not that you are a bad person or a bad dieter. It's just that the way we've been taught to deal with it is just completely wrong.
Yeah. And that's such a powerful message, I think, for people to hear, because we know, I mean, I've been working with people with disordered eating and eating disorders, not the same thing. We won't go into that now, but anorexia and binge eating disorder and any of the, and food addiction itself, emotional eating, stress eating, all of the names, labels, whatever you want to call it. Every single person has had issues within their childhood, which we talk about trauma now and again. It's becoming a word that people go, oh, yeah, right. Everybody goes through trauma. We do, but we all respond and react differently to it. And the key thing that I think you shared there that I want people to really take on board is this feeling of being unsafe, this feeling of not being safe in your own environment, but also safe in your own body, or safe even being who you are. And that is something that is really challenging and really difficult for anybody to take on board, because none of us like to think that we had a terrible, horrible, traumatic childhood. And the amount of people I work with who defend their parents, they were loving and they were caring. But if you didn't feel safe, if you felt you couldn't say what you needed to say, and we're not dissimilar in age, speaking about emotions and hearing our parents talk about feelings and stuff was not something I ever encountered. And I learned very early on that certain feelings were good and certain feelings were acceptable, and other feelings were bad. And I was really confused. I thought that was the truth, that there were bad feelings and you shouldn't talk about feelings. And that is why I recognized that I was turning to food to soothe. But I didn't know that, like you, until decades later.
Right. And it is a little bit heartbreaking to know that it took decades for me, and it might take decades for others. So I do a little bit of coaching now for people who are trying to understand, they just feel so overwhelmed by their relationship with food. They have such tremendous pain. They feel like they can't get it. They feel like their whole life is just revolves around a diet or a binge, restricting or binging. And it really is two sides of the same coin, by the way. You can't have one really without the other. And, the pain that is expressed by not understanding why they can't get their relationship with food right, with their weight right, with their bodies right, is so, it is so emotionally, it's devastating. It's devastating for me because I know it does not have to be that way, but I remember what it was like. So I had a woman who reached out to me wanted to become a coaching client, and young woman, like late 20s, possibly, super smart, brilliant woman. And I shared with her my philosophy. I talked with her about the research I had done. And unfortunately, she had been on diets on and off her whole life, had been wanting to create, try to figure out how to get rid of this weight. She'd even done an inpatient program where they managed diet, exercise, and all that kind of crapola, along with, I think, talk therapy. She had dropped out of it because of cost. It's absorbently expensive.
Right.
And just to make insult to injury, she had just been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. She's 29 years old. Lifetime of pain and torture. And when I asked her what she wanted from me, because she had done all the research herself, she had read all of these books. She was incredibly well informed. And everything I suggested to her, she sort of debunked. And I asked her what she wanted from me. And she said, I want to find the thing that works. She could just tell she was so exhausted at 29 years old from the diet industry, from the food industry, from the whole, even the healthcare industry that told her this was her fault. that she had type 2 diabetes, when obviously her metabolism and her hormonal disruption had been so profound. By the time she was 29, she had type 2 diabetes, for crying out loud.
Right. And this is why you feel so passionate about, especially this time of year, all of the stuff that is out there on social media and on the news channels and every other advertisement, and your advertising in America is bonkers compared to ours. What you're allowed to advertise is really bizarre. But it's just in your face. You can't get away from it, can you? But your overriding top tip, if you like, from the book has to be stop flipping dieting.
Stop dieting.
Don't work. Yeah.
Stop that and stop feeling like that is the solution. Here's what I can tell you. It is part and parcel of binge eating disorder. Binge eating requires restricting, which is dieting, in order to kick off the cycle. And we mentally get as addicted to dieting as we do to binging on processed foods. We get as addicted to that because we feel like again and again and again, it is the way we're going to get control over this thing that kills us or that makes us so unhappy. The reality is we're just focused on the wrong thing. So one of the things that I hope and I really want to fight for in our world is this belief that having extra, I can't even say extra weight because who the hell knows what we're supposed to look like, right? But being of a larger size somehow equates to not being healthy, somehow equates to not being valuable enough. That is just wrong. And it is a culturally driven bias that is supported and amplified by the advertisements of the weight loss industry and the processed food industry. It always makes me laugh, Vicky, when here in the States we have a commercial on the telly, as you guys say, a commercial that is for this gorgeous weight loss program. You've got beautiful before and after pictures of people that managed to get through this diet and lose a significant amount of weight for now. And then right after that, there's an advertisement for the soothing pain relief that comes from enjoying a beautiful deep dark chocolate wafer. You know what I mean?
It's bonkers, isn't it? Yeah.
It's crazy. It's just crazy.
The message is actually, so reward yourself for going on this diet by picking up food, which is classic binge eating, because that's what we do.
Yeah. And so they're very happy to have us continue to buy their products and, just fund their economic model and growth.
I mean, we're talking, it's not just £1 million industry, it's £1 billion industry. And we've got a little triangle, haven't we, of the food industry, the slimming industry, along with the gyms and what have you, and putting them all in the same basket.
Right.
Along with then the pharmaceutical industry that jump on the bandwagon. Because unless you are diabetic enough, then they're not going to help you. You've got to actually have diabetes before you can get the drugs, and they're not going to help you to stop getting to that point.
Right.
That's how it works in the UK anyway. You're heading for heart problems and what have you, but
they prescribe weight loss, which is not sustainable. It is not an appropriate intervention.
But also they are so out of the loop with particularly when it comes to women's bodies are different to men's bodies, our hormones are different, how our body works with our cycle is completely different. So if we're talking about, and this is where I kind of feel frustrated in terms of, what we're talking about really is fat loss. We're not necessarily talking about weight loss. We can all lose weight. Right, we just don't need to drink for a few days, right? And you'll lose weight. I can chop an arm off and you'll lose weight. But what we're actually talking about is body fat. That's what we really mean when we're talking about weight loss. And the most important thing I think that you said there is that until you do the work on the inside, the outside is not the thing that actually counts and that makes the difference. It's how do you feel about yourself, which brings me on to the kind of the Ozempic thing and the whole Oprah Winfrey, because she's been all over the news in just about every country. She first was saying she wasn't going to go down that road because she thought that the injections were a cheat way of doing it. You had to do it the hard way, which I think is ridiculous personally. You don't. But let's face it, we've all watched Oprah's weight loss journey, weight gain. She has been as somebody else's Sharon Osbourne. We've seen her gain. So the two of them very much in the public eye, people who have both said that they are using this drug.
Right.
But I think when it comes to Oprah, and I think that she's different to Sharon Osbourne, is that she has been doing it the right way. She hasn't been just buying it online and administering it herself, which is what is happening here in the UK. But she has been, it's been medically prescribed, and she is not on it all of the time. And I think we've got to recognize that for some people, they do feel and function better when they feel that they are the right size for them, whatever size that happens to be. And I think we've got to respect that. And this is where I, for one, feel that if there is something that can help people to help themselves to feel better about themselves, and it's not going to cause too many detrimental side effects, then why not? Gastric bands being another one that for some people, they have absolutely transformed them mentally, emotionally, as well as physically. So this is where it's a fine-edged sword, I think, between these things being helpful, but then them being abused. Yeah. And I think that's the bit that you kind of struggle with as well.
Well, I feel pretty strongly. I'm not sure I struggle with it, but I think there is. I think the pharmaceutical industry struggles with it, and the medical manufacturers that make the lap band procedures, the bypass, come up with those procedures and deliver them. Do the procedures. So, my perspective is that, man, nobody is immune from Oprah or to Sharon Osbourne. Nobody is immune to diet culture and the pain of not being what you think is the right size. I think the difficulty that I have in terms of how those tools are marketed and used now is that they presume that weight loss is the desired goal and that weight loss is the be all and end all. It just, to me, it sort of smacks of yet another type of diet. As a matter of fact, with the semaglutides, which is the Wegovy, the fat loss brand name for the Ozempic diabetes drug, is that they artificially help you suppress appetite. They don't help you, quote unquote, lose weight. They suppress appetite artificially. And so again, it does not allow us to focus on what is really causing the difficulty of weight gain to begin with, which is, not having another way to naturally soothe and create comfort and safety for ourselves. And so it artificially blocks that appetite and kind of in a way creates a reverse disorder, which is anorexia, which is for some people, they have such a severe reaction to it that they literally they get turned off by food. So we're kind of swapping one disorder for another there. And, again, once you stop using that medication, your weight comes roaring back, your disorder comes roaring back, your brain is still the same brain, and your emotions still don't know how to soothe without something to prop you up. And so kind of when it comes to those particular drugs, I wish there was more research into finding a dosage which is not about appetite suppressant, but is about emotionally stabilizing some of the emotions that people have around food. This idea of, can I use a lower dose? And it starts to calm some of that food addiction noise. And I know I've never used these medications myself, so I can't speak from personal experience, but is there a way to calm that noise that gets going around addictive substances that allows me to then do the work around, not to diet and not to pursue weight loss, but to do the work around my emotional balance, which is, how do I create a sense of safety and security? Can I relieve some of that anxiety or some of that noise long enough to be able to do some good work? So frankly, I would love to see if that's an opportunity.
That is the work that is being done already. That is happening. Yes, that is happening, which is fantastic. And there are companies who are doing exactly that are working with people. But again, as you said, it comes down to money. And if people can get it off the internet, and obviously there's going to be people who jump on the bandwagon, and you ain't going to be getting what you think you're getting off from the internet. But for people who do know a little bit about these products, and there is quite a lot of information out there, because they're not new. This is the crazy thing. they're not new. They've been used for many other things, and they actually do help with brain and quietening down that voice.
Right.
And this is where it's fascinating when you actually do go deep into this stuff. It's just one of those things that has now suddenly become popular, as these things do, for a specific thing that actually they haven't done the research on that, because there's other things that they've done the research on, which is excellent. So utilizing these things in a smaller dosage, I think is where we go. But it doesn't change what you've said. People need to be able to look at how they feel about themselves and how they use food or don't use food to soothe, to help themselves to feel a certain way or not feel a certain way. And your second book that you're writing now has kind of morphed from your first book, hasn't it? That goes deeper into this stuff.
Yeah, it actually is. So the first book I wrote very quickly, I was so enthralled with what I was learning about my own disorder and what the truth was, that I put out this book, and it got tremendous response, really positive feedback from people saying, "Oh my gosh, there's something new here that we need to talk about." So I started to write a second book that kind of, I realized over time it was just sort of expanding that first book, and it was expanding it in the ways that we've been talking about. A lot more data and research on what's going on in these industries. What is the right approach to be able to effectively use techniques that are available to us? By all means, getting the focus off of weight and weight loss and somehow fitting into a perfect ideal size. That is just disordered thinking and has no place in a civilized culture, as far as I'm concerned. But also, I'm including more stories from my own childhood. These stories, like the one I shared with you about going to the doctor's office, and with my, get the tapeworm story with my aunt, that helped me understand, looking back on them, oh, I see where this got going in my life. And I see how I became so dependent on these foods to make myself feel safe and secure. So this book is called Mouth Hunger 2, and it'll be coming out this spring. I'm very excited about it because it's got so much additional information. It's revised and expanded with a lot of great information that helps us further this conversation. And most importantly, the goal of this book, as it was with the first edition, is to help people who feel like they just are in so much pain around their weight and not being able to be a successful dieter, to understand that it is not their fault, that it is about something much more powerful going on, and that we can walk through the truth about what's going on with them and create a tremendous relief, feeling that they don't have to be ashamed, feeling that they can then look in a practical way how to really get to a place in their life where they feel healthy, happy, and able to be authentically themselves. Just show up as you are and know that you deserve to be loved and accepted exactly as you are.
Wow. What a powerful message. That is awesome. And I think that's a brilliant point to wrap up on, because I'm going to share with people where they can buy your first book in the show notes, folks. And if you watch on YouTube, it will be in the description. Also, you mentioned that you've got that quiz that people can take, which is on your website.
On the website, that is LorieLoe.com. Yep.
Great stuff. And if people did want to reach out to you personally for coaching, what is the best way that they can get in touch with you to do that?
Yeah, you can send me a message from the website. I'm on a variety of social media. You can message me on Facebook. I have a YouTube channel that is where I'm starting to post more podcasts myself. I'm excited about that. My YouTube channel is called Imperfect. Nice. Vicky, what do you think about that?
I love it. I love it. So we'll put the links to all of the ways that you can contact Lorie and watch her YouTube channel and the podcast in the show notes. Lorie, it's been a pleasure. I know that we will definitely be talking again once the book is out. Yeah. So folks, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you have found that this episode has been useful and helpful, please do subscribe to the channel. Give us a like. If you think the content may be helpful to somebody else, please pass it on, share it with them, because the more we can talk about this stuff and bring it out into the open, the easier it's going to be for all of us to help ourselves to feel better and let go of the idea that our weight and our self-worth are somehow combined and connected. They are not. So, guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Just remember, You only have one life, as far as we know, and one body. Look after it, because it is looking after you. Bye-bye for now.